So the shooter that attempted to assassinate President Trump last night was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was a resident of Pennsylvania where the rally was taking place. The rally was in Butler, Pennsylvania. I want to tell you why a lot of people think this was a conspiracy. Maybe the CIA put the hit on Trump. And I'm going to tell you why I don't believe that's true, but why I do believe the Democrats are responsible for this assassination attempt and for an innocent bystander to be killed last night. But first I want to say I had to put up a post. I quoted Marco Rubio, who's probably the favorite. I still think Glenn Youngkin's going to be the pick, but the experts say it's Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, a devout Catholic Christian, put up a quote that God protected President Trump last night, and I've reposted it because I believe it's true. And of course, the cynics, people that don't understand God, don't understand God's ways. God's ways are not our ways. But of course, I got the common reply. So you're saying God protected Trump, but didn't protect that innocent bystander because he wasn't as important as Trump? No, that's not what Marco was saying, and that's not what I'm saying. People misunderstand when we say God protects people. God did not protect his apostles from getting tortured and killed. Every one of his apostles were martyred for the gospel, except St. John. But he did protect them at other times because they needed to complete their work. God protected President Trump because he needs to complete his work. Just like God protected Pope St. John Paul II with that bullet, just like God protected Ronald Reagan. So that's what we mean. Yes, pray for that person who was killed last night. Pray for their family. God's ways aren't our ways. If you say the reason why that person died, you're full of baloney. Now, why are people thinking it's a conspiracy theory and why I don't? So the reason people are saying it is because, number one, there's been reports. I've been seeing reports, a lot of threats. Even the head of the FBI said hundreds of terrorists have came across our open border. The Biden administration admits to 10 million people coming across. But you see these Border Patrol guys, they say it's at least 20 million. And they're saying, a good percentage of them are terrorists. We know there's terrorists here. We know there's people that hate our country, that hate us. So the security detail that Trump has as a candidate asked Homeland Security, the Biden administration Homeland Security, to help them beef up their team, and they were denied. And then last night there was an eyewitness. He's like, dude, I seen the dude climbing on the roof with a shotgun. I seen him, and I'm yelling to the police, and they're looking at me like they don't hear what I'm saying. He said all they had to do was radio. He's like, I don't know why Trump was still on the stage with this guy. He's going on a roof with a shotgun, and they didn't radio to the Secret Service to get Trump off the stage. I'm freaking out, yelling. Pretty smart, common sense guy. Just seemed like a regular guy, but everything he said was correct. Like, yeah, the cops should have radioed, And then he says, how come there wasn't Secret Service on every building? There's not a lot of buildings around here. We could have had a Secret Service guy in every building. And we know for a fact now, the media, and when I say the Democrats, I'm including the media, because from 1980 to 2008, 90% of the media in polls said they were Democrat, never voted for Republican. Since Trump has come on the scene, that number skyrocketed to like 95%. I'm talking ABC, NBC, CBS, Washington Post, New York Times. They used to just leave out the truth, and now they actively lie and they participate. They're activists. They're Democrat activists. And they get people from the Democrat Party. Chuck Todd, was a Democrat speechwriter. George Stephanopoulos was campaign manager for Bill Clinton, and the list goes on and on. So when I say the Democrats, I'm including the media as well as the political leaders in the Democrat Party. I'm not talking about the people that vote Democrat, because people change who they vote for. So we know when the Democrats were making fun of Trump when he said Obama was spying on him, we know that he was right. It was proven, and they admitted it. The CIA had put bugs in the Trump campaign headquarters in Mar-a-Lago and the Trump Tower, spying on him. The CIA, lied. We had 51 former security members from the CIA, heads of CIA, all the national intelligence community lie and say the laptop wasn't Hunter's, it was Russian disinformation. Now we know for a fact it was his actual laptop. So the CIA has been actively trying to stop Trump. And you say, why? Well, RFK Jr., who's been begging the Biden administration for Secret Service because his father was assassinated, his uncle was assassinated. It would just take one sicko to want to kill another Kennedy. And he's been denied. He has no Secret Service. And chances are he's not going to win, but he's a third leading candidate. He's in third place right now. With what's going on with Biden, he could easily overtake Biden. You never know. But he's getting no Secret Service. And RFK Jr. said that the CIA came to his uncle John F. Kennedy. The head of the CIA said they want him to send 200,000 troops to Vietnam. And John F. Kennedy said no way. And a week later, he was killed. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theory. I always thought the mob killed him and his uncle, or him and his uncle, JFK and RFK. But I don't know. But RFK Jr. believes it, that the CIA killed JFK. So I don't know. But this is why a lot of people think it's conspiracy. Like, why didn't the cops radio? How come the Secret Service didn't have men on the roof? Now, why I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. Number one, I know a lot of police officers, and they're dedicated, and most cops love Trump. Every police union, was a record last election, and it's going to be the same this election. Every police union in the country endorsed Trump. So cops love Trump. So unless the cops were paid off, which, I doubt. I just think with the confusion, the kid said he was yelling to the cops. He should have, if it was me, I would put my hands up and ran to the cops. Said, hey, and then talked to him. There's a guy on the roof with a gun. And he admitted you couldn't really see the guy once he got up there. He was saying there's no way the Secret Service could see him. So I was pointing, and the Secret Service was looking at me like, what are you pointing at? So I don't think it was a conspiracy. The cops were in it. The Secret Service was in it. And even the guy said, once the Secret Service seen the shooter, they blew his head off. That's how he said it. And I was watching on Newsmax, and the guy's like, I don't know if you could say that. And it's like, he already said it. He blew his head off. He was just telling it like it was. But I know cops, and, they're hard workers, but they don't get like Green Beret training or Navy SEAL training. Even the Secret Service, I thought they were at the level of, like, my guest I had on here, Dale Comstock, a former Delta Force operator. And I was surprised. They're not as sharp they're not as well trained as we think they are. And it was proven when the dude from Florida landed a gyrocopter on the front lawn when Obama was president. He was a mailman to deliver mail. It was like a stunt. He could have had a bomb, and they let him land on the front lawn. It's like, how did the Secret Service allow that? Then there was another guy hopped over the fence and ran in the White House. I don't know if Bush or Obama was president at the time. It was a while ago. And he had a knife, and he got to the second floor. These are not Delta Force, Green Berets, or Navy SEALs protecting our president, unfortunately. There was reports of these guys getting drunk and rowdy and hiring prostitutes overseas. These are government workers, And, then they needed more security. But I think the guys Trump had were good. They did the right thing. They just didn't have enough guys to go on the roof because Biden wouldn't give them the extra manpower. But they, Trump was thankful. He said they did save his life when they seen what happened. They took action, and they literally put their bodies on top of him. They were willing to take a bullet for the president, and that's an oath they take. So those guys were stand up. They did the right thing. But I don't think they allowed it. They needed more security, and the cops needed to be more alert. Maybe the cops should have been on the roof. If they didn't have enough Secret Service, maybe the local chief should have had his men on the roofs. Just like that guy said, it's common sense. It's not a big place. There's not a lot of roofs. They should have been on every single roof. So I don't think it's like a conspiracy, like the government tried to kill him. But the media, and the Democrats, they project Trump as being violent. Trump is the only president probably in my lifetime that didn't get us into a new war. There was no war in Europe when he was president. There was no war in the Middle East when he was president. He got us out. He was getting us out. Everything was peaceful in the Middle East. We had troops there, but it was peaceful. The media got everybody into a frenzy, and when he was getting elected in 2020, and he won, 2016, and they're like, he's going to bring us into World War III. We were the furthest from World War III than ever in our lifetime. Now we're the closest to World War III. And this is according to military experts. If you remember, right off the bat, in 2016, try to remember this, the media, people going crazy, shouting, they were screaming, they're crying, I can't believe he's president. You had so-called journalists crying on MSNBC, NBC, that Trump got elected. This is going to be the end of democracy, the end of the Constitution. Maxine Waters, I put up a video on my community page to remind people what Maxine Waters did. She told people, get in the Republicans' face. If you see anybody in the Trump cabinet, harass them, get in their face. You see them in a restaurant, harass them. And then there's videos all over the internet. You see all these videos where these Democrat activists go up to husbands and wives. Mitch McConnell, who's not one of my favorite politicians, but everybody has the right to eat dinner with their wives and not be disturbed. And these Democrats came up and literally pushed all their food onto the floor and said, you get out, you're a Republican. And there was attacks on Republicans everywhere. Rand Paul, even before that, Rand Paul was attacked by his neighbor and they broke his ribs, and MSNBC laughed about it because he was a Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow is left-wing conspiracy theorist, and he binge-watched Rachel Maddow. And they laughed about it. They said, I wish he would have, killed him. Like, they joked like that. They literally said stuff like this on MSNBC. Then you had that man with the Bernie bro shirt on. He was a big Bernie supporter. Another Rachel Maddow guy. He went to the congressional baseball game and shot at all the Republicans. Almost killed Steve Scalise. They've been promoting violence. Their whole, even when Barack Obama went into public life, when he first ran, for state senate in Chicago, he announced his political career in the living room of Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers was the leader of the Weather Underground. That was the Weather Underground terrorist group. It was a domestic terrorist group that was guilty of putting over 24 bombs in police stations, at the Pentagon, killing innocent people. He was charged with murder, but he's one of these rich kids from the 60s who were protesting the government, and his rich dad had a rich lawyer and got him off on a technicality. But he admitted to it, And on 9/11, guy's like 70 years old, and of course he's a very wealthy professor in Chicago at some university. On 9/11, New York Times interviewed him and asked him if he regrets planting bombs and killing people. He said, no, I wish I did more. He's an unrepentant terrorist, and Barack Obama is friends with this guy. His name is Bill Ayers. Look it up. And the Democrats have always used violence. The environmentalists, they'll blow up buildings, to try and save the environment, But the media will project it that us conservatives are the violent ones, once Trump got elected, they started burning cities, rioting everywhere, you know, and the media tried to cover it. I remember the most ironic thing, the CNN reporter saying this was a peaceful protest here in New York City, and you see a New York City police car behind them on fire. In Seattle, they took over city blocks. I believe it was the Seattle police chief, an African-American woman, resigned. She said, because the mayor told us to give up the police station to these radical left-wing Democrat activists, and they took over the police station. And they only called the police station, they let the police in. This is how these liberal mayors, you know, hold back the police. It was all about defund the police. They allowed the police to come in because they said 2 people were murdered in the Seattle area that the left-wing activists took over that summer, which the mayor of Seattle called the Summer of Love. So they covered all this violence, so much violence on the left, you know. In New York City, they had a Broadway play where a guy played Trump, dressed up like Trump, called him Trump, and he was assassinated. And it got all kinds of awards. The media loved this play, portraying the president of the United States being killed. Kathy Griffin, left-wing comedian, posted on Instagram a picture of Trump's head, a bloodied head. You know, it was a fake head, obviously, but, you know, they laughed at that. You know, it just goes on and on. They were just pushing violence, the rhetoric, you know. Then during these riots, Kamala Harris said, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. She wasn't vice president at the time. She was a senator. And she set up a fund, the bail fund, to bail out these people that were getting thrown in jail for rioting. And they're rioting because they hated Trump. Trump was president. They wanted to express their anger. And, you know, people were getting killed. People's businesses were getting destroyed. And Kamala Harris was encouraging this. She's like, don't stop. We got to keep the pressure up. We can't accept Trump as president. You know, Hillary Clinton saying he's illegitimate. The Russians got him in, you know, and that Russian hoax was blown out of water. And again, she projected, we found out she paid the Russians $1 million for a fake dossier, you know, and the media just ignores all this. You know, they just ignore it. And they keep saying Trump is evil, you know. Biden's saying we got to stop Trump. You know, he's a fascist. He's a Nazi. When in reality, the Democrats got mad at Trump during the pandemic because he didn't act like a fascist. They wanted him to put all these crazy mandates throughout the whole country like the governor of New York and California did. And he said, no, I'm going to allow the governors to do what they think is best for their state, and I'll help them in any way. And he helped everybody. Even Gavin Newsom, the failed governor of California, and Cuomo, the failed governor of New York, both praised Trump and said he did everything we asked. In fact, you know, all our hospitals in New York were overrun, and within 2 weeks, he put up tents to house thousands of people in Central Park. And Cuomo didn't send anybody there, but he did it. If he needed it, it was there. You know, they had doctors ready. So he didn't act like a fascist. Biden acted like the fascist with all the mandates he came out with, forcing us to take medicine we didn't want to take, tons of mandates. He acted like the fascist. And as far as Nazis, Alan Dershowitz, a Jewish Democrat activist, he was like lobbied for Obama, lobbied for Clinton, been a lifelong Democrat. He said 90% of it anti-Semitism in this country comes from the Democrat Party. And you see it with the Squad, AOC, all these guys. And these are the guys that love Biden because he's giving them everything they want. He's been giving them, you know, socialist Bernie Sanders is all in with, you know, riding with Biden. And he's like, you got to, you know, bring in more socialism. So first, you know, Sanders convinced them to forgive all student debt. Now he's convinced them to forgive all medical debt. Oh, we're just going to pay for everything with your taxpayers' money, you know? And Biden just keeps telling people he's a fascist, he's evil, he's wicked, he's got to be stopped. We got to put him in our bullseye. So they're getting people to think Trump, just like the Nazis, got people to think the Jews needed to be exterminated. The Democrats in the media And in Washington, D.C., have got a large percentage of this country believing that Trump is the evilest, most wicked man alive, and he needs to be stopped. So they can justify, this is how people, this 20-year-old kid probably justified, he probably believed all this nonsense and thought that he was doing the world good by taking out Trump if he killed him. But the reality is, it's just a lust for power, and the Democrats have no shame. I've been watching politics my whole life, and Republicans will beat Democrats by beating their arguments. We have conservatives, we have much smarter arguments. We're critical thinkers, we go by results. Democrats always win by emotion. They get people to hate you. They destroy people. They will destroy you. We've seen Judge Kavanaugh. They try to destroy him, bringing up all these fake witnesses saying that he was in gang rapes, and like people at these parties were like, no, he wasn't. And they stormed the Supreme Court, and they bashed on the doors, and nobody was arrested. They found, Judge Kavanaugh said, we need security, and it's in the Constitution. It's in the law that our Supreme Court judges are supposed to be protected by the federal government, and the Biden administration refused to give him any security. And they found a shooter who was going to shoot him. He had a gun, and he was planning on killing Justice Kavanaugh right outside his home. So it's like these Democrats are encouraging this, and they're not doing anything to stop it. But they'll come out with their mouths and condemn it. It's just over and over. You see this rhetoric, that Trump is racist, he's evil, he's a fascist. And there's no truth to it. There's no truth to it. Just a narrative they build. And they know 45% of the people are going to vote Democrat no matter what. You had George Reed said, I don't care if Biden's in a coma, I'm voting for him. You had Whoopi Goldberg say, I don't care if Biden's pooping his pants, I'm voting for him. Then you have 45% that are going to vote for conservative policies. They don't care who the leader is. They just know they need conservative policies. Then you have the 10% that the media calls independent, but they're basically personality voters. I've met these people, the uncommitted. They vote on personality. So the Democrats know this, so they try to make Trump's personality so unacceptable that they have to vote Democrat. And they do this by constantly lying, constantly saying how dangerous he is, how evil he is, how wicked he is, But it's all been backfiring, It's been backfiring, and they knew they were losing in the polls, so they tried to bankrupt him. The first thing they did was say he overestimated his Mar-a-Lago property. A judge in New York City said it's only worth $18 million. Where, like, if you know anything about Miami, a small house could be worth $18 million. He has a huge mansion and acres and a golf course, and they're trying to say it's worth $18 million. Most real estate guys in Miami laughed and said it's closer to $1 billion. But this judge, this Democrat activist judge, said it's only worth $18 million and fines him $500 million. $500 million, trying to bankrupt him, And then a woman comes out like 20 years after the fact that she claims is a fact. And he, and claimed that he sexually assaulted her, and the judge awards her $100 million. And she laughed about it on NBC. She joked with one of the NBC broadcasters that they're going to go out shopping. And then on another broadcast, they were like, I know it's very tragic to be a rape victim. She's like, no, I think it's sexy being a rape victim. This is what this woman said, who's trying to say Trump sexually assaulted her. So they try to bankrupt him, and then they try to lock him up, but everything is backfiring because people are seeing the unfairness. Everybody should be judged equally under the law, and they're treating Trump worse than anybody. They're charging with things that no one's been charged with in Manhattan and throughout the country. So they're seeing that backfired. So they're turning up the rhetoric, trying to destroy the man. And that's why a lot of people think, they couldn't bankrupt him, they couldn't put him in jail, so now they're trying to kill him. I mean, I'm not saying the government wouldn't do this, but I think in this instance, it was just some young 20-year-old going on emotion, that Trump's evil has got to be stopped. And, the media needs to stop this. Hopefully most Americans will recognize the level of hate the media has caused, the level of hate the Democrats have caused, and they'll tone it down. And we'll just, like John McCain, Republican who ran against Barack Obama, this woman was so angry at Obama and said, he's a terrorist, we got to stop him. He said, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's a Muslim terrorist. No, ma'am. He's not a Muslim, and he's not a terrorist. And he's not a bad guy. I know him. I served in the Senate with him. He's actually a decent human being. We just disagree politically, You hear that coming from John McCain. You hear that coming from Republicans. You don't hear that coming from the left. From the left, you hear these guys are Nazis. They're going to take away all your rights. And, as Catholics, I'm going to address you as a Catholic Christian. We fight not against flesh and blood, against spiritual principalities. And why is the devil trying to kill Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump was the most pro-life president we ever had. And people say, oh, he's not pro-life. I'm going to break it down for you. I had Dr. Alan Keyes, who's has a PhD in political science from Harvard University, worked closely with Ronald Reagan, was personal friends with Ronald Reagan. And he said Ronald Reagan wanted us to stop paying for abortions overseas. He couldn't stop, Roe v. Wade here, but he said, we're not paying for it, and we're not paying for it overseas. So they met it. So he had Alan Keyes write the legislation, or whatever you call it, the Mexico City policy. And they call it the Mexico City policy because that's where the conference was. And it put an end to the United States government paying for taxpayer money. And then of course, Clinton wins, he reverses it, starts paying it again. Then Bush wins, and he puts it back in place. And then Obama wins, he starts paying it again. And then Trump wins, and he said not only did Trump put the Mexico City policy back into place, but he expanded it because it only covered a small portions of abortions overseas. It was too much technicality. He said it was too hard to get them all. He said Trump quadrupled it. So then Trump defunded Planned Parenthood the most he could with his authority. There's some that he couldn't do with executive orders, but as much as he could, he defunded Planned Parenthood as my, or if you want to call them what my African American friends call them, Klan Parenthood, because it was started by Margaret Sanger to eliminate the black race, which they're in the process of doing in America. So the abortion industry makes so much money worldwide. They don't want Trump. Ultimately it's Satan, but the love of money is the root of all evil, Jesus said. So Satan uses this money incentive to get men to hate him. And then there was no wars when Trump was president. We're spending hundreds of $billions on wars that we didn't spend when Trump was president. So the military industrial complex doesn't want Trump in. He's going to put tariffs on China. China doesn't want Trump in. And there's a lot of businessmen that make millions of dollars dealing with China. And a lot of these businessmen happen to be senators and congressmen on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, that have a lot of money invested in China. Even though China, the whole world knows that there's a genocide of the Uyghur Muslims. And they even said to President Biden in one of his first interviews, when he was actually still able to do interviews, the Chinese are actively trying to kill off the Uyghur Muslims. They have them in slave camps. They're using them for slave labor. They're selling their kidneys, their organs. What do you think about that? And he's like, well, every country got their own culture. That was Biden's reply, So there's a lot of money at stake if Trump gets elected. So, I always liked Trump's policy, but, I knew he wasn't like the greatest Christian, But I gained a lot of respect for him last night. You know, we have a president right now who could barely get through a press conference, has to have his wife help him off stage. Just shows weakness to the world. We have no respect from Russia, China, no respect. They see weakness. That's why they felt they could just invade Ukraine. That's why they felt they could just attack Israel. They have no respect for us. And you see Donald Trump gets shot in the ear. He got grazed by the bullet in his ear. We now know this. Gets up bloodied. The Secret Service is trying to whisk him away. He's like, no, wait. And he's like, fight. The guy's a warrior. He just gained so much respect for me last night. I've never seen a stronger president. I've never seen a stronger presidential candidate. So that 10% that votes on personality, I think he just turned them. I think that shooter backfired what he wanted to do. I think people are going to support him now. People are going to see, wow, you've seen, that was not on a teleprompter. That was not, given the reporters questions like Biden said. That was a tragedy. That was our president under pressure. How did he react? He didn't run away scared. He's like, fight. Stood right up, put his head in the line of fire. There could have been another shooter took him out. To me, that was a warrior statement. He's a strong man. So my advice, if you love America, vote for Trump. God bless and stay Catholic.